Hey y'all, welcome back to day 15 of this horse trailer renovation. So there is lots of random stuff that I do in this video. Right now I'm starting out with the trim for the windows. It kind of drives me nuts about horse trailers sometimes because when they build them, they don't frame out the windows, which I've never really understood because it's such an easy thing to do. Kind of like they do in RVs, so you don't have to have these trim pieces, but literally every single horse trailer that I've worked on has these trim pieces. And so I just ended up reusing these. I sanded them down, stained them the same color as I stained everything else, and now I am just reattaching them to the windows. If I had to take all of the walls off of this, obviously I would have reframed these and made it so I didn't have to have the trim pieces, but that's not where we're at, and these trim pieces actually don't look terrible. Anyway, so now that I have got most of those on, I will end up actually taking the one on the kitchen window out. I don't know why I put that one in because I'm putting in a backsplash and I know better than that. Anyway, it's fine. So next I'm going to move into the little kitchen area right here. This is the range hood fan. Every RV or horse trailer should come standard with one if they have a propane stove. And this one does. I do have a new propane stove for it as well. But it needs some type of ventilation. And so that's what this basically is. And this was kind of funny because the wires for this were not long enough to actually reach the wires that I needed to hook it up to. And you see, I kind of like lifted it up and was like, I don't think this is going to work right here. And so I ended up having just some trash pieces in my shop that I put in here as like a little stand that I could sit it on top of and then hook up the wiring and screw it in. So once it's the right height and I have a little platform to put it on, super easy to wire this. It's basically just a positive and a negative. There's nothing really crazy about it. And then I obviously like the crimp connectors versus just regular wire nuts because I feel like they don't come as loose as wire nuts do. So I've crimp connected those wires together, and then these pretty much just have really long screws that go up into that cabinet. And so that's what I'm doing right here is I'm just making sure that the screws are in the correct position and that this is flush against the back of the cabinet and flush against the left side of the cabinet and centered in the window as well. So that was kind of one of those things I had to make sure that it was going to be centered before I put the cabinet in so it didn't all look weird. So next is the microwave, and the old microwave was really yucky and I think it was broken, which is why I ended up replacing it. Sometimes I replace microwaves, sometimes I don't, depending on my client's budget. But this one definitely needed to be replaced. It's an RV microwave, and the difference between the RV and the regular ones is the RV ones come with a trim kit and a mounting plate that goes inside the cabinet so it doesn't shift around while you're going down the road. It's definitely essential. This is the mounting plate that I'm talking about right here that kind of goes on the front and it secures it into the cabinet. So you definitely need that if you're putting in a microwave in an RV, because if you just slide it in a cabinet, it will come out. It will, 100%. I usually buy most of my supplies from Rec Pro, but I think for some reason they were out of the microwave that I wanted. And I think this is one that I just ordered off of Amazon that had good reviews. I'll see if I can try to find a link for it and put it in my Amazon storefront if anybody wants to check that out. Now this is the mounting plate that goes on the bottom. So there's a piece it's just like a metal piece that screws into the cabinet itself. And that also keeps it from sliding around while it's inside the cabinet on the feet. And so you'll get to see that in just a little bit when I put it in, which is right now. Now, sometimes I'm really smart and I think things through, and then other times I'm not really smart and I don't think things through. And before I put this cabinet in, I did not measure the opening of the microwave, or I guess the original opening, to make sure it was big enough to fit the new microwave that I had for it. So I had to do a little custom fitting right here. You see I just got a straight edge. I marked how big I need it, and then I'm just using my multi-tool to kind of buzz off the top. Obviously not ideal, and it got dust everywhere, which is really a bummer, but it is what it is. It had to happen. So Anyway, that's just why it's kind of important to think a few steps ahead of the project, because you could run into an issue like this. Again, not a huge deal, but still really an annoyance, and I wish I would have thought about it beforehand. Okay, so now what I thought was the correct size, I'm going to go ahead and get some of this dust off, this yucky stuff, because I don't want it just sitting in there and being gross. I have a weird thing about leaving sawdust in places that I think nobody's going to see, because somebody else could see it and then think that I do sloppy workmanship. So anyway, I always like to clean up the inside of cabinets, and then I put it in and then it fit perfectly, and I was like, why won't it go? Oh, that's because there's these little tiny feet right here that are preventing it from sliding in. So I kind of just notched it out where those little feet are, and I took it back out for the third time now and just cut a little V-shaped groove in so that it's able to just slide right in. I'm not worried about it coming out because there's still a lip right here. And then I also have the mounting plate, or I guess there's two mounting brackets on it. The one that's in the cabinet and then the one that's around it. So after that, it slid in perfectly, and then I can actually screw this mounting face plate to the actual cabinet itself. So this baby ain't going nowhere. And I went with a black microwave just because I like black appliances, and it's going to match all of the black everywhere else. So just to keep it uniform, that's what I did. Now this is the lower cabinets for the kitchen, if that's what you want to call it. And this is where the fridge goes. And so there is some area right there for storage on the very left-hand side. And then this is the divider for the fridge. And I'm just popping that divider back in. Obviously making sure to be careful with all the propane lines and the electrical that are right there. And this is also going to be kind of not a moot point, but I do end up having some shenanigans with the fridge later on down the road that I did not foresee. Okay, so moving on from all that, right now I am cutting down some 2x4s to 3/4 inch by 3/4 inch. And I know you're thinking to yourself, wow, that seems really thin. Yep, that's because it is. I'm going to build a small mount / cabinet that the TV is going to sit on. There's not really a good place in this horse trailer for a TV. And so I'm building just a small cabinet, 1, to hide some of the electrical that I have. And 2, it's going to double as storage. And 3, it's going to, I guess, triple as a TV stand. So it's going to be right up where the gooseneck is. You'll see it once it all comes together, and once I put it in the trailer, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. But for now, I'm going to start framing it out. So this is going to be a really, really small cabinet. Again, I still need the mattress and everything else to fit up on the gooseneck, so this can't be but so big in order for everything to fit. So basically, I am making 2 rectangles. I think it's maybe 8 inches by 15 inches maybe. And then I am going to put some basically corners to join them together, and then put some supports in the middle. So this is fairly easy. I'm pretty sure I used only 1 screw on each of these, and then maybe put some staples along with some wood glue. You can't really put 2 screws in these unless you use some really, really small screws, just because it's only 3/4 of an inch by 3/4 of an inch. So that kind of really limits how you can fasten these together, but 100% drill pilot holes in these because they will split if you don't. And then you just have to get a whole new piece, because when it's that small and it splits, you really can't reuse it when it comes to framing. So you see how everything's coming along. It's basically kind of looks like a little table right now. And then I'm adding some supports in the middle, and then I'm going to add the bottom part as the base, or the top, whichever way I decide to put it. I don't remember. It's all the same anyway. So that's pretty much it right there. It's pretty simple. And it's not like anybody is going to be sitting on this or putting any type of significant weight on this. So that's why I'm not really worried about it. That's only 3/4 by 3/4, which is also standard practice for RVs, which is, kind of surprising. That's what your main cabinets are made out of. And they actually hold weight. So this will be perfectly fine for its intended purpose. So now I'm just screwing it into kind of the gooseneck part right there where all of that fresh wood is. I did have a clip of where I put the wood on the front of the gooseneck there, but for some reason my tripod, like the camera went whoop and just went down and then you couldn't see anything. So I didn't include that, but I just put some liquid nails and then stapled a piece of wood on top of it. That's way it's nice and clean. Right here you see I am putting pretty much the surround on this, if that's what you want to call it. It's just some 5mm underlayment. You guys know I like to use that. It's nice and lightweight and it looks good. So trim that up and then put some trim on the corner pieces right here to give it a nice finished look. And that's that. That box is pretty much made, and then I'll put a nice countertop on it to match the rest of the countertops later on. Now I do want to go ahead and finish some of this other small trim that I have right here. This is the corner where the water tank is, if you remember. I'm just going to plop some trim on there and then trim the top of that off so it's nice and flush. This PVC trim, sometimes the nail doesn't all the way go in and it bothers me, so that's why you saw me tapping it right there. This ended up being a moot point because the fridge didn't work, but that's why I like horse trailers, is because I can store everything in the back. And so I was carrying that in, and then I was cleaning this up, and I wanted to put this in here because if you guys are ever looking for like RV parts that you can't find, these little like fins right here, I found them at Young Farts RV Parts. I know it's a funny name. It's hilarious. They're hilarious guys, but they have a lot of things, like random things that you may not be able to find. So if you're in the market for something weird, they probably have it. And that ended up being a moot point too, because the air conditioner also did not work. So that had to be replaced as well. So this is the trim. Or I guess it was day 14, I cut some of these strips too. And these ones I went ahead and stained so I can put up in the front of the gooseneck, and you'll see that later. But for now, I'm going to wait for that to dry, and I'm going to start putting in some more of this electrical. It's so much brighter in here now that these lights are in, and my video isn't nearly as dark, which is fantastic. So I lit this trailer up because I was worried that with all of the wood and with the dark colors that are on the wall, that it would feel really like gloomy almost and not bright like I usually have them, because I usually paint trailers white. But that's not what my client wanted, and so that's not what I was going to do. So I added a whole bunch of lights, and I like these up here because they're, I've actually wired it to a switch, and if they want to control this separate from the rest of them so they don't have to get out of bed, I wired it so they can have one side or they can have both sides on, and they can turn them off while they're in bed. So now that I relatively have those hooked up, I'm going to go ahead and start putting the switches in. This is just a piece of cardboard that I traced out and cut out with my multi-tool. That way I know how big the hole needs to be for these switches. So switches are all kind of different. So that's why I just like to do this. And then I put my little template up there and cut it out. So right now I have a hole right there. As you can see, I'm just sticking my finger in it, and I'm going to cut on the far side. And then I usually stick my fingers in to make sure that I'm not going to cut these wires, because it's kind of hard to tell which direction the wires come from sometimes. And I definitely don't want to cut the wires, because then that would just create more of a mess for me. So you see I'm pulling them out, and then to clean it up, I stick my fingers in there and just make sure that the wires are nice and tucked and out of the way. All right, so after the hole is made, I can go ahead and put in my switch. But in order to do that, I need to make it's kind of like a jumper wire from one terminal to the other terminal on the switch, because I have 3 wires and I technically need 4. And so I'm jumping one 12 volt to the other 12 volt side, and then I can connect my other 2 green wires into my switch. And basically when I turn it on, that means it's going to complete the circuit and my light will turn on. So 12 volt systems are fairly easy. I guess 120 volt systems are fairly easy too, as long as you know what you're doing. So my power coming in is that yellow wire right there that I am attaching my lead to. And then basically that's going to turn power on and bring power to the light. So those other 2 are basically bringing the power. If you flip the switch on, it say, oh, okay, let me give it power. And so it gives power to those other 2 lights. So there's 2 lights there and there's 2 green. So one goes to each one, which is why I have a switch that has 2 different switches on it. So you can have them both on, or you can have one on, or vice versa. Okay, so now that it's all hooked up and I know that it works, I can go ahead and put the screws in. I did need to make this a little bit bigger. If you remember, if you've been here since day 1, you know that there's another sheet of plywood underneath that. And that's what I attached the fancy interlocking tongue and groove pieces to. I don't know why that just went out of my brain. Anyway, sorry. And so it's kind of like a less than half inch ceiling right there. So it just kind of got nicked. And I needed to trim it a little bit more. And so after that, I just put the screws in. There's a little face plate that goes on it, so that fits in perfectly. And same thing over here. This one actually already has a switch wired to it, but it's old and yucky, and I'm going to replace all the switches. So again, right here, I'm just making a new jumper wire because the other one was broken. So I'm going to jump from one 12-volt to the other, and basically when you turn the switch on, it puts power to the light and tells it it's time to turn on. So I can go ahead and do that. This right here, I'm making another template because this one is, I think it has 3 switches on it versus 2, so it's a little bit bigger. So same thing I'm doing here. I'm just going to use a little template, and then the hole for this one is a little bit smaller because I built this wall brand new. So you see I just drew it out, and I'm using my finger to kind of guide it along the side farthest away from it. And then I'm just going to kind of pull that one section out and tuck the wires back as I go. Just being careful not to nick any wires in the process. And this switch actually operates the outside light and the rest of the lights that are in the trailer. And then I think there's one other light. I don't remember what it was. Maybe it's two switches control separate lights in the trailer. And then I can just put the screws in and then put the faceplate on. I don't know why I didn't do that there, but the faceplate does go on that one, and then that will be finished. Now over here to this TV stand that I built, I do have some wiring that comes out of this. There is a switch right here, and that actually operates, I think there's one light, and then there is these LED strips that were kind of fancy and I thought were cool that go underneath you're about to see it light up. Yep, right there. They go underneath the window shades. And so I'm actually going to end up replacing all of those with a more upgraded LED, which is going to be super cool. So you can turn those on and it kind of adds like a glowing effect near the windows. So that's what that goes to. And then that one switch actually controls all of the window lights. And the rest of this is really just simple stuff. These are an over the couch light right here. I did not go with the puck light for this one because I like these bigger lights because they give off more light. And they're 2-sided. So if you want to turn one side on, you can, or if you want both sides on, that also turns on. And just put those little covers back on, and again, told you a whole bunch of random things. The speaker was all cracked and yucky, so I'm going to go ahead and replace that speaker too. That way I can test out the surround sound system that I have. I have it installed on the inside and the outside, and so the speaker should be pretty good. So I just unscrew it, clean it up, and then put the new speaker in, obviously paying attention to which one is my positive and which is my negative. That way I can wire it correctly where my radio is. So yeah, anyway, I hope you guys have thoroughly enjoyed this, and I'll see you back for day 16.